As soon as that was done, and they opened up again, the attacks against the workers began. Because ultimately, society, we live in a capitalist world. The capitalist world, the profits are the key. They must make more profits for the wealthy. So when technology advances, when the ability to produce things to satisfy the wants, to improve the lives of the people, to reduce the working week, to increase the wages, instead of doing that, they do the opposite. Technology is used to enslave the people. Digital currencies, internet surveillance, and now the great game is artificial intelligence. Just quickly, just before you. So they made Boston Robotics. You've seen that creature? It's a robot, looks like a human being, runs around, can jump up and down, do somersaults. That is the police of the future. That's the army of the future. They will use them against us. And by the way, the war in Ukraine is about that. They're getting rid of their old shit, of the old tanks, of the old artillery, the old equipment they've used for decades, and the Russians are using similar equipment, you know, boom boom, knock down, boom boom, smash a building down. But at the same time they're testing out new stuff. What is the new stuff? They send an aeroplane into the air. It drops 20,000 drones. Each of these drones has a little bomb on it. It's got no human being in it. It's got an artificial intelligence target that has been set for it. Either people, they can get your face, just your individual face, or a building, or a location, or a car, or a tank, or something like that. And these drones are dropped. They can fly 50 miles, driven by artificial intelligence, to go to locations and blow things up. That's what they're experimenting with. And their aim is, from the war in the Ukraine, to develop technologies that they will use in future wars. And the war, by the way, is not against Russia. It's against us. It's to be used against us. That's what the technology is to be there for. That's what they're up to. That's what their planning is. And they will replace the shit they're getting rid of in Ukraine with all the latest tech. The Robocop will... First, there'll be a waiter serving in a restaurant. I've been in one in Malaysia in December. I was in Malaysia to visit my dad. I went into the restaurant, there's a robot going round. I was in London Bridge last week. London Bridge, they got a robot cleaning the floor. But of course, the purpose is that to develop this to a higher level. They said the machine will replace the human being as the instrument of repression. So it appears automatic. You automatically behave the way the machine works, because otherwise it can smash you in the face and you can't do anything. You can't sue a machine. You can't charge the machine with a crime. Instead of this, the machine will be artificially intelligent. You know, last week I went on Chat AI. Chatbot, they're all the rage of the talk of the town. I went on there, I said, I asked the question about the mRNA vaccines, as they call them. I'm sorry, I didn't take it. I'll take 1 second.
It's okay.
mRNA vaccines. And then they said, oh, the mRNA vaccines are efficacious and safe and so on. And I said, are you sure? And I kept cross-questioning it. And then he said, yes, they said, I said, what paper are you citing for your evidence? And they said, the New England Journal of Medicine. And I said, that's a Pfizer paper. And I said, and it doesn't claim what you're saying. The absolute efficacy is different from the relative efficacy. They cited relative efficacy of 95%, but the absolute efficacy is what? And then they came back and said, yes, you're correct. The absolute efficacy is 52%. And then I said, well, is the absolute efficacy 52%? How many differences would it make? And what about this paper from Peter Doshi in the British Medical Journal? And then it came back and said, yes, the absolute efficacy is less than 50%. I said, if the absolute efficacy is less than 50%, should the vaccine have been permitted to be used? And the bot says, if the absolute efficacy is less than 50%, it should never have been authorized. So the chat open only when you really fight back against the machine. Does it admit this? And of course, the reason they're allowing this to be used by everybody now for free is so they can test that out. So that the fact checkers get control over the future. And so everything that's said to us in the future by the artificial intelligence, which at the moment looks like cool and geeky. Wow, I can make a Picasso better than Picasso with a couple of words. I make art better than Picasso, better than Van Gogh, better than Hogarth, within a couple of clicks. And I'll show you some next week. I'll bring some I've made. It's not bad. It's better than Picasso. But
Will it be for sale?
sorry,
How much are you selling it for?
I haven't thought about that yet. It'll come. Better sell it quickly, because when it's flooded, when the market's flooded, who cares? It's not worth anything anymore then, is it? When everyone does it. So you've got to be the first, and that's why they're jumping up and down. I've done, new world, new essays. The MBA, you know, the MBA students, one university in America, the MBA, they did a test on it. They sent in the paper from the chatbot, boom, boom, question, boom. It answered the question. They passed it with a top grade. So none of the MBA worth nothing. I was taking a university group on a walking tour a couple of weeks ago from San Diego. I said to them, artificial intelligence, I said, all you need to do now for you, the professor was there. I said, all you need to do is enter the chatbot. And then they started laughing. I said, look, he's going to know it's from a chatbot. So when you get the chatbot, make some, because it doesn't make grammatical errors. So I said, make some grammatical errors. All you need to do is write the thing and then make some grammatical errors. Then hand it in. And then they won't be able to know. But of course it degrades the value. The point is, we are on the cusp of a revolution in technology. Or better said, we have a revolution in technology, which could serve the benefit of humanity. But it's in the hands of the same people who've imposed a tyranny over the world over the last 2 years. The pinnacle of the development of tyrannical rule has been compressed into this lockdown period. And now we're in the post-lockdown period, but the lockdown was ended by the war. Lockdown ended, war started. So now look, we are here, we are in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And then we're talking about Germany as well, another wealthy country. Do you not look now, I don't know who you are, but do you not look now at how much you're spending on electricity every day? How much you spend on gas every day? To cook an egg is 30p. Cook an egg is, buy 6 eggs is £3, where I am, £3, you might get one £2, £2 something. 2 years ago, it was 80p for 6 eggs. 2 years ago. Butter, £2.50, it's like Manchego cheese. Butter, £2.50, it was 90 pence 2 years ago. And then they tell us there's 10% inflation. That's not 10%, ladies and gentlemen. That's what normal people have to spend, and it's not 10%. It's 200% increase. And so a war between the classes is developing, as well as the war against the entire misuse of technology by the ruling class. With the great advances in technology, they are using that as an instrument of global repression and exploitation.
I was going to ask what's driving inflation. The Financial Times just said it was mostly corporate profits driving inflation, price gouging. And so it's not, they said it's partly to do with Ukraine and Brexit, but a lot of it's just simply, I wanted to ask what you thought of that. When TfL and nurses ask for their wages to go up, we get told that's going to drive inflation, right? But when my landlord just raised the rent last week, or when these companies are charging more, that's not considered to drive inflation. It's only when nurses and TfL workers ask for higher wages. Well, that's perfectly true, of course. I wanted to ask what's driving inflation and why, like, what can we do to bring it in?
Well, on the one side, there was this period when they basically locked everyone, you know, in the old days, in the 1930s, 20s, when employers wanted to mess up with the workers, they would lock you out of work.
Lockouts.
Right? They'd lock you out of work. The lockdown was that. They locked everyone out of their workplaces. And then they reorganized the entire structure of work. You all right? Yeah.
Dry eyes.
Oh, is it? I've got a bit of that as well. Yeah, the lockdown locked the workers out. And of course the middle classes, they sat at home and they did a bit of work at home, so they thought they're doing all right. Until they realized they could be fired by email. In fact, an artificial intelligence email fires them. And so suddenly their power is gone. And now, of course, and then during that period, they spent vast amounts of money on furlough when no one was doing anything. So you're printing money not backed by increased goods. For 2 years you're doing that. So that printing money creates inflation. That's the fundamental background to this. Then, of course, you've got conflicts, Brexit, you've got Ukraine war and all the rest of it, but that's not really what's behind this game. What's behind it is the printing of money, and then the battle that follows from that. When economies are in crisis, big players are in crisis, at the top of the pinnacle, monopolistic institutions or state, when they are in crisis, what do? They say, I'm fighting my enemy. My next door neighbor, normally if you've got a booming economy, all the Chinese restaurants in Chinatown, well, they're all standing there happy as pleased as Larry, everyone's full. One might be fuller than the other, but they all get full. When the economy's gone down, they're all fighting each other to get the customer, and they want to smash the other one. So at a higher scale, Google, Amazon, now you've got two companies control the world, Vanguard and BlackRock. They own shares, 15% of the shares in all the major companies in the world. They pull the strings, and the Davos Brigade are behind it. To pretend anything else is foolish. That doesn't mean Klaus Schwab controls the world, but it means that the key players are pulling the strings there. There's no doubt about that. We don't doubt the British intelligence agencies, the military, the heads of police, the heads of judiciary, the heads of the big corporations play the decisive role in shaping what happens in this country. It's not you and I in Hyde Park, is it? Right? So we know there's a massive disproportion between the ordinary people and those in power. And the game between those in power is a battle. A battle against the workers, a battle for marketplaces against other countries, and a military battle and a technological, and the two things are the same thing. Military and technology is the same thing. A mobile phone is a military technology. And the objective of the military technology is to control society and to squeeze profits out of you. The purpose of you having a mobile phone is for them to accumulate wealth from you. It's not for you to communicate with someone. It's for them to gather the communication you've made and make a product out of it.
I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, really. I just want to know, I know you're a Marxist and a socialist. What kind of socialism do you put? There's a huge variety of thinking about this. I don't want to make the discussion arcane for people who are not.
Well, it's not arcane because...
What kind of solution, like, not a particular reform or a particular law, but what overall vision, like overall ideology, just the bigger picture?
I mean, I'm trying to touch on these key questions about technology, because those are the issues of our time. Right? When Marx was writing, he was writing about how do you overthrow the system, so a revolutionary change in society, the seizing control of the means of the decisive layers of the means of production. How do you take control of them? And then what are they used for? So now we're dealing with a different technological scenario. We have these technologies. We have giant corporations, global corporations, involved in everything from the military to information warfare to technology to food production, you name it. So they have to be expropriated. And by the way, that has to spread internationally.
By what? By the state? By democratic?
By the people. If you take over a company,
what kind of institution
if you take a hotel into public ownership, unless it is served, if it's just to make money or to have a wonderful place for the wealthy people, then there's no point in doing it, unless you're just transferring the money from that to the poor or to the people. So then what do we do with that? What means do we control it by? That's a very good question.
How do we make sure those officials in the state are accountable to the people they serve?
That's a very good question.
Because we might end up in a bureaucratic nightmare.
I'll tell you one thing. The problem I've got is that in the last couple of years, of course, most Marxists in the world condemned me. I mean, those who knew me, quite a few of them do, condemned me. They said I'm a plague rat, I'm right wing, I'm hanging out with the conspiracy theorists. It turned out, on 90% of the questions, the conspiracy theorists were right, and the so-called Marxists were wrong. That's at that, and so I've had to rethink, of course, because of that, facing this situation, what do you do? And the perennial question that you've just asked is, how will power be exercised by a new type of society? That's about working out, on the basis of the latest technology, how we administer. And the problem is, I can't really answer, just the same as Marx couldn't answer in 1870, I can't answer you now, because in 6 months' time and 1 year's time, we will be dealing with a totally different technological scenario than we are now. It's just a simple fact. You can go online now, stop fucking around with these chatbot things, AI things and so on. You will discover the foundations for a totally different technological world. As big a change as what happened with the emergence of the internet is on our doorstep. And technological change in relation to military, information, what is truth? We've had an experiment with that during the pandemic. What is truth? How do we know what truth is? When I was a kid, you went to the Encyclopedia Britannica, you argued out, you went to the library. Now you go bum, 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 bang, and the machine tells you something, and if you disagree with it, it says you cannot say this, and you cannot disseminate this. So here we have new terrain of battlefield. Privacy is the central question, and freedom to express is the central question. I think those are two core elements to be able to navigate the direction which we have, which is just lucky that we are Speaker's Corner people, because many times you and I have disagreed, but here we are talking perfectly rationally and logically with each other. We know the problem, we look at the problem in different way under different circumstances, but we come back to it because we've got the geist from Speaker's Corner. We have that feeling, well, if I can't go to Speaker's Corner and argue the case, what's the point of me being here? So we have to protect the human being in all of this, because that's being destroyed. I met a friend of mine from many years ago, just about an hour or two ago. We were sitting in a cafe in Soho having a chat, and he said, look, I've dropped out. I worked with him on the internet stuff more than 20 years ago, and we ran internet servers long before YouTube. We were making video on the internet, radio on the internet. We were teaching the people how to do that. But then YouTube came along, then Google came along. They monopolized everything. That must be smashed, their monopoly over this. So there are different ways of doing that. One is to enter the world, which is the subterranean world of the internet. So, you know, the Tor browser, secrecy stuff. But I wouldn't rely upon that either. The fundamental question is, how do we act as human beings in real life? So my friend said, I'm not using a mobile phone anymore. And he went to a hostel in Glasgow. And when he got to the hostel, they said, what's your mobile phone? And he said, I haven't got one. And he said, you're the first person I met in many years who hasn't got a mobile phone. What does it mean if you've got a mobile phone? It means you're permanently tracked. Permanently tracked. And everything you communicate is owned by somebody else. Not only by somebody else, but by artificial algorithms to be used against you. The more they know about you, the more power they have to individualize their control over you, and you don't even realize you're being controlled by it. They've manipulated you. They know what porn site you looked at, they know who you communicated with, they know what news you looked at, they know what you liked, what you disliked, and therefore they can manipulate you as if it was a subconscious dream of yours controlling you to make their profits. That's the truth. So we need to be very careful about offering this is the solution, because it's dependent upon the conditions and the technology that we've got, and to the degree that we break free of this and seize control of our lives again.
Marx sort of said, and I think wouldn't you agree it's the same as today, he said about England specifically that it would have to happen through parliamentary reform.
Well, I don't think that's realistic.
Because the Labour, this is what I want to think. What do you think of the Labour Party?
I no longer think that's realistic.
They are the most promising institution for this reform, but they don't seem. The reason they have such a big lead is not because people like Labour, it's because people hate the Tories right now.
The Labour Party, unfortunately, and I was a member of the Labour Party for many,
seen the revelations
for decades.
The Labour files, haven't you? Al Jazeera.
The Labour Party is an instrument of power of the ruling elite. It's like Justin Trudeau, like Jacinda Ardern. The only reason she resigned, by the way, was because there were cases coming up in New Zealand. They had allowed 55 global DJs to go to New Zealand during the height of the lockdown to play in New Zealand, right? But there were hundreds of people who had had a baby elsewhere and were no longer allowed to return to their family in New Zealand. What a barbarian. She was like putting that horse face and saying how the lockdown, how we're serving, how we're looking after. And in New Zealand they attacked the protesters. In Australia they violently attacked the protesters. In Canada they imprisoned many of the protesters. They stole their money. Sorry?
They were shooting at them.
Even in Holland they shot at protesters. In Holland, one of the great democratic... In Austria they said, if you leave your home, we're going to pass a law, they were about to do it, if you leave your home and you haven't a vaccination, you can go to prison for 1 year. That's what they were saying. Sorry, I didn't take your question. What was it?
No, it's fine, go on.
So, the countries that were once considered citadels of democracy have now become, in embryo, in essence, underneath the surface appearance of democracy, of freedom, of the right to speak, the right to strike, the right to demonstrate. Underneath that surface appearance lies a totalitarian state. That's what we have. In essence, behind the corporate side, YouTube, Google, Vanguard, BlackRock, the big military, the big intelligence, the big news agencies. It's a totalitarian story they got going. They want to impose controls that automatically, in order to extract maximum profits, you don't let people independently decide what they do. You march them into doing things. You make them go and buy something. You make them spend their money. You make them gamble. You make them buy drugs. You make them take vaccines. You make them behave themselves in the maximum way to squeeze the maximum labour and the maximum profits out of them throughout the course of their life, and to teach their children to do the same. They want us effectively to robotize humanity. But of course the robot doesn't make anything for the capitalist. You spend money on the robot, of course the value goes down. Remember Napster? When Napster came out, suddenly the price of all the music collapses. Then they said we can't have Napster because people are sharing. So then they said Spotify, you must pay like under feudal times, a tithe to the musical industry. So now Spotify controls the music.
They barely pay anything. And they don't even pay that much to them.
They don't, but nevertheless they control the music. And now of course they got the machine music that's going to go. It's like 1984. 1984 they had these departments that would knock out pornography for everybody. That would knock out stories for everybody. Would knock out music for everybody. Now they've got this. Now you type in, and it's only a couple of months, they've already got it by the way, they just haven't released it on the market. You type in the great musician of all time, Taylor Swift. You type in Taylor Swift, song about Speaker's Corner, bang, it'll produce it within a second, right? The video, you type in Heiko Khoo making a speech about communism, Hyde Park. They'll scan through all the videos of me doing that and make another one.
Like a deep fake.
Yes, that's exactly what they do. Deep fake. Me and Emma Watson making a speech about communism. That's where we're heading within months of where we are now.
How will we know
months away.
We won't be able to know what's real and what isn't.
We don't know what's real because here we are. This is real. That's not real.
So you think people will do a mass exodus away from the internet and come back to reality?
To be honest with you, I can't see any other pathway. There are a lot of people.
I know people deleting their social media. And
yes. I think there will be a giant exodus. Thank you very much.
Is that money? Is that money?
Snotty boy.
That was a tissue. Oh, it's even better.
I think it's true. And by the way, so a friend of my eldest son, I met him in the first summer of lockdown, and they were at university together. And he said to me, I said to him, so what's happened to people during this lockdown? And he said, these are university students. He said, half of them are taking vast amounts of drugs, ketamine, cocaine, MD, smoking, but mostly ketamine and cocaine and that type of stuff. And they're fucked up in the head. Half of the kids, right? Half. And then he said the other half suddenly became yoga bunnies, running up and down the street, according to Boris Johnson's rules. You can exercise for an hour. I'm being healthy and fit, But now apparently, my friend was there, he's in Glasgow, he said 70% of the kids in the schools in Glasgow are like that now. 70%, I mean, it's an anecdotal story, that's what I heard, 70% of the kids in Glasgow. That's gone down from 90% now. It's 70% around. You know, doing this, taking the heavy psychotic drugs.
I did the same.
And of course that fact fits in very well with this whole idea. You know, you've seen the adverts, you put a thing on your face and you got a three-dimensional world. There's a girl, they got an advert, I seen it. Metaverse. You're sitting there, the girl's bored, she's like playing around physically doing something. And then they suddenly put this thing on her head and she's punching against balloons in the sky. And supposedly is happy because she takes off that thing and she's relaxed, she's done all this exercise with that stupid thing on her face. That is a digital tyranny that they want you and I and our children to live in a few months' time. Not a few years, a few months' time.
Can you give some comments on coup d'etat in Germany?
I don't know much about it. There was an attempted coup d'etat in Germany about a month or two ago. Layers of the military, some of them questioning what's going on, associated with some old aristocratic families. But it's not significant in and of itself, except for this, is that of course the same internal dynamics that lead to a fascistic attempt to seize power in Germany are under the surface in many countries, in the most advanced capitalist countries. And that's a consequence again of this dislodge between those who have power, which is maybe the top 10,000 people in any country, in any advanced country like Britain or Germany or France or Italy or America. About 10,000 people are all the people playing the games. The top judges, the top businessmen, the top bankers, the top military, you know, the top news agencies. They're the guys and girls who control the game. In every country, maybe no more than 10,000. In a country like Pakistan, perhaps a few hundred. In a country like England, perhaps 10,000, no more than that. No more than that. And so amongst them, there are conspiracies and conspiracies. To say someone is a conspiracy theorist merely means someone is acting like a detective to try and work out what's going on. They can have wild ideas, they can be mad ideas, but generally to analyse based on a framework that says there are many conspiracies seeking to control our country, seeking to control the world, is perfectly correct. It would be insane to think anything else.
But they redefined it.
Sorry?
They redefined it.
They redefined it. What they do is they say, because I had a debate with someone online the other day, and I said, I'm happy to discuss with you about COVID-19. He's a left winger, and he was criticising me for having gone mad during the lockdown. And I said to him, I'm happy to debate with you. I've been asking all the lefties to debate with me for a year and a half now, and all of them refused. I'm glad you accepted. Then I said to him, and then he said, oh, I'd like to debate climate change. I'd like to debate a Big Bang theory. So I said, well, I know Piers Corbyn, I can get you a debate with him. And I said, I know Eric Lerner, I can get you a debate with him, he rejects Big Bang. And then the guy turned around and used an excuse, and he goes, no, I'm not debating with David Icke and the flat earthers. So as soon as you disagree with them, they call you a flat earther. Where are they getting this from? What programmed them to say this shit? Does it mean I'm a flat earther because I question what you're saying? Because I question the general narrative? Does that make me a flat earther? And even a flat earther, I'm happy to debate with a flat earther. Why are you scared? If they're so damn stupid, why are you scared to debate with them? Surely the point is that flat earth is disprovable easily, and therefore you should be able to argue the case easily. Why would you be afraid of debating with someone who's a flat earther? And by the way, there are many people who are religious here. So I don't believe in God. I'm not afraid of debating someone who believes in God. Why should you be? Half the world and more believes in God. If you're not prepared to debate with them, who are you prepared to debate with? So they've created an intellectual, well, a pathetic intellectual psychology that says if you've got a university degree and you stayed at home and washed your hands for 2 years, You put a mask on your face. Some are wearing masks now. I saw one this morning with a child of 5 years of age wearing a mask on the street. I was going to shout out, and it's a crime against her child to do that. And so the key thing is we have to keep our sanity, be able to express to each other, be able to argue with each other, debate with each other, and turn the tide. There was a woman once upon a time, Margaret Mead, famous anthropologist, she said, never believe that you cannot change things with a handful of people. In fact, it is the only way anything has ever been changed. You start with a handful. And from that handful, you bring about a wave of change. And that's where we're going. People will be, you see, they're all AI. In a few months' time, many people will be going, I don't want this. I don't want a robot coming down the street trained with AI, knowing me better than I know myself and pushing me around. I don't want that. People have to decide and think about this. Where are we going? How do we change it? How do we stop it? How do we overturn it? How do we make technology the slave of man rather than us the slave of corporations controlling the technology? Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, Dr. Heiko Khoo. I love saying that.